Welcome everybody to this did not start on time. Well, guess what? We're not even doing the countdown. I thought the countdown was going. I was going live. It said there was an error. So we are live now. Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with Bob Rose, not Sean Williams, Bob Rose. How you doing tonight, Bob?
I'm doing pretty good, Alan. I'm still kicking, which I suppose is a start. You and I, last I checked, are both currently free agents still on the open market, older veterans. So we're waiting for offers, I guess.
League minimum, man. League minimum. I will,
Same.
that's more than I make now, so I'll take the league minimum every time. So the Saints' big news yesterday was they got Chase Young. That's about the biggest splash you'll probably see out of this free agent class.
Mm-hmm.
And then today they promptly announced, well, you know what? He's got to have neck surgery. He's been putting it off for a while. He needs to have it done now. So it's people are like, yeah, that's typical Saints. We thought we had a good deal, but we got a guy that's going to be injured and not available till training camp. I mean, it's a 1 year deal, $13 million. It's about what you pay for a guy like him. He's 24 years old. I'm not, I'm more concerned about whether or not he can be a productive, consistent defensive end than I am really about his neck surgery. It's not like he's in his 30s and we have to worry about this. I think he's young enough that he can bounce back for these things. It's a 1 year deal, $13 million, and it's all on him to prove it. And I don't have any problem with it. I mean, how do you feel about this signing and also the news that he was injured or needs surgery?
No, I don't have a problem with it at all. And matter of fact, back on March 5th, I wrote that on Saints, through Saints News Network, I wrote that I felt like the Saints had a fighting chance to land Chase Young, if no other team approached Chase with a lucrative long-term deal. Well, no team did, so that's why the Saints brought him in at a 1 year deal. And like you said, it's a potential win-win situation for both parties. If Chase Young plays well on this 1 year deal, then he sets himself up for then a big time. Maybe astronomical long-term deal, be it with New Orleans or someone else. If he doesn't play well, then like you said, the Saints have a $13 million cap hit for this year, not even for this year. They've spread it out over the next couple of years, but they can reshuffle that if they choose to move on next year. And then the win for the Saints side could be, if Chase Young is an answer to their pass rush problems, then you sort of have him locked down or in a situation where you could potentially franchise tag him, next year, with Cam Jordan potentially moving on in the next year or two. Now, I'll say this. I'm like you. I'm not overly concerned about the neck problem news. As long as he is ready for training camp, hopefully there's some medical opt-out or something that the Saints build into the contract if there are, worsening problems.
There is.
Then that's an intelligent move on their part. And again, it's I'm not going to call it a low risk. It's a moderate risk with a high reward player. But I'll say this, to those people, you Saints fans who automatically think that the pass rushing problems are solved, no, not necessarily. This Chase Young has only looked like the defensive rookie of the year 1 year, his rookie year. He got started off with a bang last season and then plateaued and kind of peaked and valleyed big time after he was traded to San Francisco. My point being, if the Saints thought that he was their answer, then the Saints would have offered him a multi-year deal, or someone else would have come in with a multi-year deal. the Saints still have an issue here, and an issue that I wouldn't be surprised they still address through the draft. Probably not in the first round now, but perhaps with a late day 2 pick, or something like that. Edge rusher, I think, is fairly deep in this class, has fairly good depth. No slam dunk top tier players, players we all like, your Dallas Turners, your Jared Verses, that are surefire first round picks. They're probably not going to be selected by the Saints now. But other guys that I think New Orleans is going to take a look at, because again, you're not signing Reggie White or anybody here. You're signing a guy with some medical issues, who really hasn't lived up to his second overall draft choice billing back a few years ago. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But having said that, I do like the signing, and I feel pretty confident that he'll at least be a productive member of the rotation.
Yeah, my thing has been always that you know what you're getting with Chase Young. You're getting a guy who's an inconsistent player, but has shown flashes. And when he's motivated, when he is engaged, looks like somebody who's the number 2 overall pick of the draft. To me, this is like signing. I just forgot his name. 2016, we signed that guy from Detroit as an interior defensive tackle. He had the heart issue.
Fairly.
Nick Fairley. It's a lot like signing Nick Fairley. Nick Fairley was a guy who never lived up to that billing. Wasn't the defensive savior that the Lions hoped he'd be for their team. They were going to team up with Sue, and it was one of the best defensive line in football, and it didn't work out that way. However, when he came to the Saints in 2016, he looked like the kind of guy that you wanted to commit long term because he was the solution to defensive tackle problem. Now, he had a heart problem, so that was ultimately what ended his career. And the Saints actually were the ones that found the heart problem. Now, this was after they signed the extension and they were able to get their money back from him, but they were the ones that found the heart problems. And, if you keep playing, you're going to drop dead on the field. So to me, Fairley in his production, not what ultimately happened with him, but his production, that's what ideally you'd love to get out of Chase Young. But you're hedging your bets. I can go still select a defensive end in the first round at 14 if one falls to me, but I don't have to go get one now. I have rotational pieces that I can put in, and maybe if he produces like say Carl Granderson or someone like that, that's all we need. We just need a guy who can come out there and do something. We didn't even have that before. So to me, it's a win-win for the Saints. It's about what you're looking for, and it's all one-year deals. It's just like Willie Gay at linebacker. It's just like some of these other players we're going to talk about in a minute. It's all low-risk players who can help you right now, but you're not committing to them, so they become a burden on your salary cap years later. You're not dealing with this years later, and you got to fill this stuff, replace these players or extend these players to avoid the cap hits, and that's the good thing. So the Saints also signed, and we'll talk about the other guys in a minute, but the Saints signed, like you predicted over the weekend, Nathan Peterman, or Peter Meme, as some people have referred to him because of his numerous interceptions. And they also signed, who I thought he was the son of, but he's not, Stanley Morgan Jr. Local kid, went to St. Aug, but was an outstanding special teams guy for the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's talk about a little bit about Stanley Morgan Jr. because Stanley Morgan, obviously, Stanley Morgan Jr.'s father is in jail. He's not the same player, not the same person as the player, but Stanley Morgan was an outstanding receiver for the New England Patriots in the 80s. Stanley Morgan Jr., what does he offer you as a Saint, as a special teams guy?
A lot of speed, good gunner. I remember watching his film and doing an analysis on him way back when I was with Canal Street Chronicles. So, the early days of me covering the team. And I actually liked what I saw. Again, a lot of speed, decent hands, raw route runner. And that was the problem once Stanley Morgan got into the NFL, is that he never got the coaching to develop his route running abilities. Therefore, as a wide receiver, you're probably only looking at a guy that'll fill out the back portion of the depth chart. But on special teams, he has some kickoff return capabilities. Hell of a gunner. Very aggressive. He will stick his nose in there. He likes to be around the football, likes to be around the action. And guys, really, if you think about it, this team is going to need those type of special team guys. They lost Isaac Yiadom. They lost Zach Bond. Nefi Sewell isn't going to be ready to start the season. Those were three big special teamers, that are no longer on your roster. So just based off of that alone, I think Stanley Morgan Jr. has a reasonable chance to earn a roster spot.
I agree. And I think, to me, him being a gunner / guy that can do possible returns for you in a pinch, that's what's important. I mean, the Saints have always put a heavy emphasis on special teams. Kickoffs are going to be more important than ever. We've already talked about Rashid Shaheed, even though he went to the Pro Bowl as a kick returner, that the importance of maybe preserving Rashid Shaheed so he can be more of a receiver, not just a kick returner. That's the kind of stuff that excites me about this guy, because it's a low risk, no name kind of guy, but you need guys like that on your field. And sure enough, here's Mel Gray right there as we're talking about special teams. But he's a low risk kind of player, but you need those kind of players fill in your roster. And he played a long time over there in Cincinnati, 5 years, I believe. So he must be good. He's sticking around. And I can remember when we brought in JT Gray, or we signed JT Gray, and he made the active roster, people were like, why the hell do we have a guy just for special teams? Yeah, why did this guy make the team over, I don't know, any of the other safeties that they had that looked like they were legitimate safeties that could start? Well, we have seen JT Gray's been to the Pro Bowl. JT Gray is one of the top special teams players in the league. That's what happens. You put an emphasis on special teams. All right. I've been trying to avoid him, but let's talk about Nathan Peterman. Why would the Saints sign this guy? I have my reasons why I think they signed him, but why would the Saints sign this guy?
Alan, I wish I had a logical, concrete answer for you. And like you said, when on your show last week, we both figured that the Saints would bring in a veteran with a couple of wide receivers. Check. Cedric Wilson, Stanley Morgan Jr. We hoped that they would reach an agreement with Chase Young. Check. They reached an agreement with Chase Young, and we expected them to sign a backup quarterback, a veteran backup quarterback with starting experience. Check-ish. I guess from my perspective, when I said veteran quarterback with starting experience, I should have said veteran quarterback with positive starting experience, because Nathan Peterman has given you nothing, but horror, for every team that he stepped on the field for. So the answer, he's familiar with Derek Carr. Having been his backup with the Raiders. He's familiar with Andrew Janocko, the new quarterback coach, because he played for him in Chicago. I guess from a team aspect, that makes some sense-ish. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, if Derek Carr plays poorly, there's not too many people that are going to be calling for Nathan Peterman to put a helmet on and come in off the bench. But I'll tell you, I look at it this way too. I think it actually shows, and perhaps shows, that these coaches have more confidence in Jake Haener than what maybe we thought they did.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
because I believe that if Jake Haener can't beat out Nathan Peterman for the number 2 job, then Jake Haener has no business being a quarterback in the NFL. That's the way I look at it.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's where I was going with this. I think this is a signal that, for as far as the Saints are concerned, Jake Haener is going to be the number 2 guy. That they've seen enough out of him to think that he can play the number 2 guy, and that Peterman is coming in basically to be a coach in the quarterback's room. Kind of, this is what he's going to teach you. This is what you're going to see in this offense. This is what you need to learn, and really to coach up Jake Haener more than Derek Carr, but coach up Jake Haener and get him prepared. And the emergency quarterback could be Peterman. I think he probably ends up in the practice squad, and then you could always go to Taysom Hill if you really needed to. But I think if Haener just stinks it up during this preseason, then you're looking at bringing in a Ryan Tannehill or Joe Flacco or someone like that who's always going to be out on the street. No one is signing those guys and putting them through training camp and all that other stuff. They're not doing that. Those are going to be the guys who are sitting on their couch and they get the call because Derek Carr has been injured, or they get the call that, hey, Peterman, not Peterman, Haener really is bad, and he's not going to be on this team much longer. We need help. And you think about Tom Savage. Tom Savage was the backup quarterback for Drew Brees. I want to say it was 2019. Almost positive it was 2019. He was supposed to be the backup quarterback, and Sean Payton looked at him and, my God, this guy is so bad. We've got to make the trade for Teddy Bridgewater right now. I cannot watch another ball go in the dirt. We've got to get Teddy Bridgewater in right now. And sure enough, it was 2018. It was 2018 because he played that last game. I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's to me, it's the same basic idea. Now, granted, Carr is no Drew Brees, but Carr hasn't missed a start. He got injured a lot, but he hasn't missed a start. So you're looking at somebody who's come in and kind of finish a game. And then if you got to make a long-term decision, you go grab one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly expect the Saints just to go with 2 quarterbacks this year and use that roster spot for somebody else. Not have 3 quarterbacks, and definitely not spend money on 3 quarterbacks. So to me, if Peterman ever sees the field as a New Orleans Saint outside of a preseason game, the vultures are circling Airline Drive, and the Superdome is empty. That's the only way this man ever sees the field. It's not going to happen. It really isn't. But that being said, 2 stories broke over the weekend. Number one, Justin Fields got traded from the Chicago Bears to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm getting ahead of myself. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Meanwhile, the Steelers traded away Kenny Pickett to the Philadelphia Eagles for 2 draft picks, and a story came out today, a rumor story, saying that basically the Saints were interested in trading for Kenny Pickett, but did not show any interest that we know of for Justin Fields. Personally, I would have loved to have Kenny Pickett on this team, only from the standpoint of during a preseason game, if he gets sacked and I'm operating the Superdome sound system, I am so playing, oh my God, they killed Kenny, you bastards! Just to do it, just to watch the reaction. But yeah, your thoughts on this? Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson supposedly is out there for a ham sandwich. I don't know. Somebody I know. And the only difference between Zach Wilson and a bag of poop is the bag, that kind of thing. So, Your thoughts, though, on Justin Fields and Kenny Pickett?
First of all, with Justin Fields, if you recall, I think we even talked a little bit about it on the show. Uh, about a week or so before free agency started, I wrote that the Saints may have an opportunity, to trade for Justin Fields, because I didn't think that the trade market would be even close to what the Bears thought it was going to be by their initial asking price. And sure enough, it was. I figured that Justin Fields would ultimately be dealt for a conditional day 3 draft choice, which is exactly what happened. The Pittsburgh Steelers are giving up a 6th round pick. That could elevate as high as a 4th rounder. Dependent on playing time contingencies. So basically, if Russell Wilson looks like Russell Wilson has the last 3 years, and Justin Fields gets an opportunity to play, Pittsburgh might have to give up a 4th round draft choice. So I mentioned that as a possibility that the Saints might want to kick around. But even then, I said that I personally didn't think that it would happen. For a couple reasons. The Saints have plenty of day 3 picks. They have 4 5th round picks, 2 6th round picks, and a 7th. But this team has a lot of holes to fill. The Saints have had some success with day 3 picks, very recently. Plus, I expect New Orleans to package those picks and move up at least once, into probably round 3 of the draft. That's another conversation for another day. So in other words, the draft choices were a higher commodity than what the potential of developing Justin Fields was, in my opinion, for New Orleans. Secondly, the Saints have Fields' old quarterback coach in Chicago, Andrew Janocko. The Saints interviewed Fields' old offensive coordinator in Chicago, Luke Getsy, for a position. There's a reason those 2 guys were available, is because they got fired. They got fired because Chicago has one of the most putrid offenses in the entire National Football League. The fault lies on the Bears organization as a whole, but the fault's always going to fall to who? The quarterback, the offensive coordinator, and the quarterback coach. These are the 3 men in question. So it would have actually surprised me, if New Orleans would have made that move. If they would have, I kind of would have seen the logic behind it. You get Fields for 1 year on a rookie contract, while you kind of look at him and see if he is worth picking up either a 5th-year option or trying to iron out, maybe a couple, 2-3 year contract extension, if you don't have a high confidence in Derek Carr. But I'm not surprised it didn't happen. I think actually Justin Fields goes to a better situation with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He'll probably get a chance to play sooner, because of what we just said about Russell Wilson. Now, Kenny, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say the biggest issue, and this is going to lead to the Kenny Pickett talk. The other issue is he's in his 4th year. This is going to have a 5th-year option coming up. So you're getting a 1-year rental, and then you have to make a decision. Am I going to spend $25 million to keep Pickett on my team? I can't see the Saints doing that, because that's a huge financial commitment. Plus, you're paying Carr. So you're talking what? If Carr is $30 million next year, you're talking about $55 million or $45 million allocated towards 2 players who are both quarterbacks. That's a lot of money to tie up in quarterbacks. It's too hard to try and make a fair evaluation. Pickett made more sense to me only from the standpoint of this is his year 3. You still have 2 years of the rookie contract before you have to make a decision. That's if you're looking at somebody you're going to evaluate into the future. I'm not saying either one of these guys are a future quarterback. Kenny Pickett and Justin Fields both showing the same limitations they had coming into the pros. Pickett has got the small hands. He struggles to get the ball out quickly, has an elongated throwing motion. all those things. And Fields takes a long time to process information, very slow delivery. He is used to making one read and run. That's what he saw in college. He has to learn how to read the field more, no pun intended, all those things. Yeah, you're right. Pittsburgh already said they weren't picking up that fifth-year option, so you knew he was available. But to me, the most damning thing of all is what you just said. You interview Getsy. You have Janenko as your offensive staff as your quarterback's coach. You know that they sat and talked about possibly trading for Fields because that was the least secretive move in the NFL. Everyone knew the Bears were going to draft Caleb Williams this year or a quarterback with their first overall pick. You knew Fields would be available. Who better to talk to about him than the two guys who worked closest with him the previous season? And if those guys said, hey, you know what? This is one of those things where he was in a bad situation. We put him in the right situation. You can get something out of him. He's worth looking at. I would go ahead and just make the call or whatever. Or they said, F no, stay away from this dude. You don't want any part of this dude. He is not getting it. He will never get it. It's too much work. There are much more attractive prospects coming out in the draft every year to waste your time with this guy. And I certainly believe it's the latter. I know a lot of people get upset when you hear that, but I really do. I believe it's the latter. It's just, it's as I told people on social media, find someone who loves you the way that some Saints fans love first-round athletic quarterback bust. Because my God, you would have thought we had an opportunity to get Joe Montana or Michael Vick or Lamar Jackson, and we were just too stupid to see it for a sixth-round pick. I'm sorry, that's not. To me, that's not the case.
No, and Fields is a hell of an athlete. I mean, he's run for over 1,000 yards 2 years ago. So he does add that element to your offense. But what he takes away is the guy can't read defenses, and he can't hit the broadside of a barn more often than not. You have guys now where if you get them the ball on the move and on time in Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara, they can make plays with their legs in the open field. So you need to have a quarterback to get them the ball. Justin Fields, I don't see that, kind of accuracy from. And,
right.
While we're on the subject, Kenny Pickett, if Kenny has a pocket, he can be an accurate quarterback. And I watched a lot of Kenny Pickett at the University of Pittsburgh. It sickens me to say because, Penn State. But I said this about Pickett coming out of college. Even before I watched the tape on him, and I came after watching the tape more, with more scrutiny, I became convinced that he's a guy when you put a little bit of pressure on him, he panics. He doesn't fall to the ground or throw the ball into triple coverage often, but he uses his legs not to escape pressure and make plays. I see a guy ever since his second year at Pitt, and he's never improved on this. He'll drift away from pressure, and fade off of his right shoulder. Well, when you're a right-handed quarterback and you fade away that direction, you are literally taking away all your receivers and any chance that you have to make a play even with your legs. Kenny Pickett has never improved on that, even in his couple of years in the NFL. And he's going to need a spectacular coaching to get him out of that. And I'm not sure that the Saints have that kind of coaching on their staff. I love Kubiak and love all their offensive additions, don't get me wrong. But B, even if they did have it, Alan, and you know this as well as anybody, these guys are afforded the luxury of time to develop someone. They need pieces that can plug in, contribute in a positive way right now, or they're all out of jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be honest with you. My attitude with Pickett, Fields, even Zach Wilson, some of these first round quarterback busts, and we've seen so many of them. Mac Jones is another one. Um, they're really suffering from the NFL's lack of a developmental league
Yes.
because those guys, college football players, aren't producing pro ready quarterbacks anymore. College football just isn't built that way. Um, too much of the spread offense, too much of getting your best at quarterback. Here we go. Too much of your best athletes are at quarterback and not linebacker, running back, wide receiver, all those sort of players. So all they do, especially now that you have the transfer portal and you building more super college football teams and things, basically what you end up doing is you end up getting a guy and you put him in there and you just be the best athlete on the field and you just
Hmm.
outrun everybody and you just get away from people because you're so much faster and so much more of a better athlete, especially when you're playing Midland schools like Coastal Carolina and I'm picking out some Sun Belt schools, but those kind of Southwest Missouri State, those kind of schools that you're seeing, and these super conferences now, the leftover teams that don't have many athletes anymore, and I'm thinking of like the Dukes and the West Virginias and those kind of schools. It's not fair. They don't have enough players. This team's got 40 guys or 30 guys who are possible NFL players, and you got six. It's not going to work that way. So, when those kind of quarterbacks get to play those teams, um, you know, they have they have an advantage. And so when they get to the NFL where the talent level is much more even, um, suddenly they can't do what they were doing before. And it's almost like the University of Houston back in the late 80s, early 90s, when it was
Yeah.
all run and shoot, and you had David Klingler and Andre Ware, putting up video game kind of numbers in college, 45 touchdowns in a season, that kind of stuff. Absurd things. Throwing for 4,000, 5,000 yards in a 10 or 9 game college season. You just, it doesn't happen like that in the NFL. So, yeah. Um, so that's why I think a developmental league would help these guys. And the negative is they're going to take a lot of abuse.
Right.
That's a lot of football to play. But the positives, if you look at NFL Europe, the positive is just a 6-game season or 7-game season. When you get to play football, they get the opportunity to learn and make those reads, and the game slows down for them and speeds up that learning curve inside that rookie contract. So that's just my opinion on these things. And I think, Fields, Pickett, those kind of quarterbacks could benefit from something like that. So do you think then, before we talk about Cedric Wilson, do you think then that the Saints are going to look at another quarterback, or is it going to be pretty much Haener and Carr?
No, Alan, I think it's going to be Haener, Peterman, and Carr. Yeah, the possible exception might be in the draft if they get into day 3, specifically probably the 5th round, and then all of a sudden a quarterback that they had on their board for a possible day 2 or early day 3 selection, if he drops to a round 5 or a round 6, the Saints might pounce then. But otherwise, I think your quarterback room is set, for training camp. The only exception then might be if Haener doesn't develop how we think that he should, how they think that he should, and Peterman is what Peterman has always been. At that point, the Saints will have to either scour the waiver wire or trade some future draft choices to bring in a different kind of veteran quarterback. Otherwise, I think this quarterback room is set.
Yeah, well, and the reason why I even asked this question is because Michael Pratt, the Tulane quarterback, is going to be out there, and I think he is a low day 2, probably day 3 kind of pick, low 4th, early 5th round kind of guy. And to me, if the Saints see any possibility, and he's 4-year starter, leadership skills, he's very raw as a passer, but he's a pretty good athlete out there. He can run and things like that. If you see something like that out of him, you could possibly see the Saints go and get someone like a Michael Pratt. But I'm with you. I think we're pretty much set. I think if they look at a quarterback, they're looking at somebody who is going to be the eventual starter, and they're not ready to make that decision yet. That's a decision I think they can make a couple years later, not right now. They've got too many other holes to fill. So let's talk about Cedric Wilson, the receiver from the Dolphins, former Cowboy as well. Somebody that I liked coming out of Dallas. Michael Gallup is also somebody who's available. And he was somebody else I liked too out of Dallas at the time. But, Cedric Wilson, he seems to be a guy that would fit this offense. He came from Mike McDaniel. I couldn't think of his name. I said Cedric Wilson. That's what I've been saying, right? I haven't been saying the wrong name, have I?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. I drew a blank for a second. I just want to make sure I wasn't saying the wrong name. But he's the Mike McDaniel offense is a lot like the Shanahan offense, which Kubiak has worked under. It's a little bit of the Kubiak system and stuff. So he seems to somebody who fits that role. Is he the number 4 receiver, or do you think that the Saints probably will look at somebody else to come in and be that number 4 guy, and he's really that veteran that's trying to hang on and fight for a roster spot?
I don't see the Saints signing any more free agent wide receivers unless it's special teams guys or bringing back a Lynn Bowden or Keith Kirkwood. It wouldn't surprise me if the Saints, in fact, I expect the Saints to draft a wide receiver. How high would depend on how much confidence they have, not only in the Cedric Wilson signing, but the development of A.T. Perry also. I know a lot of people think, now that the edge rush problem issue has been settled, that the Saints can draft a wide receiver, and Brian Thomas from LSU. Stop it.
Mike Neighbors. Come on, man. We're getting Mike Neighbors. Don't you know anything?
Right. It's possible that the Saints might grab a guy in day 2 if they really like him. But I'm with you. Cedric Wilson has been a quality number 3 receiver in Dallas. A 3-4 type guy in Miami. Not the kind of production that a lot of us, you and me, for starters, both expected when he made the jump from Dallas to Miami. But he's still a quality guy. He can play special teams. If you don't find a receiver that you like in the draft, and you instead have to take a pick or 2 in day 3. As a developmental guy that you think might be a sneaky good pick, then then Cedric Wilson can fill out this depth chart nicely. I think the Saints have a quality trio. Well, we know Chris Olave is quality. We know Rashid Shaheed is quality. And we know based off of the last 8 games that A.T. Perry looks like a number 3 guy, maybe a number 2 guy. So if Cedric Wilson is going to be your 4th receiver and we get the Dallas version of Cedric Wilson, I think you got yourself a pretty good receiving core here. Again, I expect the Saints to draft someone, maybe a couple people, because you only have 5 wide receivers on your entire depth chart right now. Don't be surprised if Bowden and or Kirkwood are brought back. But I can't see the team thinking that wide receiver is a high priority going into the draft.
Yeah, there are a lot of receivers I like in this draft. Don't get me wrong.
Same.
I think there are guys that they probably will look at come day 3. That if those 5th round picks they can't move up to do anything with, that's where I think you'll see a couple of receivers go in that 5th round. And that's pretty much where they're looking at guys that could be special teams kind of guys that may develop into something that could be a physical receiver. I think their big thing is we're going to go with some of these young guys and we're going to bring in young talent to come in and be the new core of this team. We're not going to try and fill it with a bunch of veteran free agents to make one last run. And that's kind of been the theme to me of this entire free agency class for the Saints. We'll get a couple of guys in here. Oh my God, look at that score. We'll get a couple of guys in here to do some stuff for us. But we're basically going to rebuild our core with young players. And we're not going to overextend ourselves. We're going to straighten our cap out. We're going to give ourselves more flexibility so we can move off of these older players instead of constantly extending them to get salary cap compliant. So it's a different kind of free agency than what we've been used to. And I think in the long run, it's going to be better for us. Yeah. I think this team is still close enough that they can win 10 games if they hit right on the draft. But they're not all in anymore. And I know that sounds weird because if you go into the playoffs, you want to go all the way, but their goal is twofold: be competitive while also rebuild the team, not just tank, dump salaries, live through cap hell, and hope we can make it through the draft, because there's no guarantees in the draft. I mean, we thought we got a good guarantee with Penning, and we didn't get one with Penning. We just spent 20 minutes talking about quarterbacks, teams that are trying to build their franchise around a quarterback, and all the quarterbacks in the first round in the past couple of years have been moved to other teams, traded for next to nothing. And there'll be at least 3 busts in this year's draft class of quarterbacks. So I prefer this way. It's a little more frustrating, but I prefer this way of rebuilding while being competitive, and view kind of Carr as your bridge quarterback who's going to keep you competitive, but you're going to build your core around him. So when you're ready to bring in a young new quarterback, we'll get one. So last player we want to talk about, the Minnesota Vikings. I cannot say his name to save my life. If you can, more power to you. He's a tackle / guard, young guy coming off of an injury, but has a good upside. First off, what is this dude's name?
I'm not going to pretend to say. I'm not even going to attempt to say his full first name. Basically, it's Oli Udoh. Udoh, and I'm sure I'm not saying that right either, but we'll just call him that for the time being.
Okay.
And like you said, he was drafted, as a tackle by the Minnesota Vikings. But over his 4 years there, 4 or 5 years there, well, 4 years, he was hurt all last year. He played both guard spots, played both tackle spots, played 3 years for Clint Kubiak and Rick Dennison in Minnesota. So he has an idea
Mm-hmm.
what kind of offensive line, system that those two want to run. I'm not saying that this guy is going to be a starter, but 2 years ago he was a starter at guard. Um, mammoth young man, 6'6", 320, and looks every bit of 6'6" and 320. Not a splashy signing, but the kind of guy that the Saints have had success with, that swing guard tackle guy, who could be maybe a sixth offensive lineman, come in on jumbo packages, and, you could feel fairly confident stepping into a starting role, for a game or a couple of games if one of your starters goes down. Again, it's not a splashy signing. It's not a Chase Young. It's not a Willie Gay, who, by the way, again, Alan and I both really love. But this is the kind of guy that could be a sneaky good pick, to bolster depth for your offensive line.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I look at it here. He's a guy that, you could possibly plug him in at guard. If you can't get the guard that you want in the draft, it's still possible they could take at number 14 a tackle / guard, like the kid from Penn State. But if you can't get that guy, you could possibly plug this guy in at your guard position and get a left tackle. Penny you may feel like Penning is the guy that you're going to fix his man. For this thing, and he does this when I'm on the show. It's set up for DSL. That tells you how old this this system that we're on, the StreamYard. They really want you to be plugged into the internet. Don't use Wi-Fi, and it's annoying as anything because my Wi-Fi signal is extremely strong, but this thing drops out. But anyway, possibly Clemente. Possibly, I'm thinking, somebody who can come in and just be somebody who can play multiple positions and, kind of limits how many offensive linemen you have to have. And that's when we were talking earlier about the quarterbacks, only having two quarterbacks, that could be where you keep more players, offensive line and defensive line. Maybe keep more pass rushers, that's all that to be considered. So, to me, the big thing with him is you've addressed the guard position at least temporarily. Somebody could play tackle if you want him to play tackle. So he fills in an injury spot that you may have. It's another good signing. It's a depth signing. It's not a guy that you're putting a lot of money in. So I like it. The only challenge is okay. So where are you going to go in the draft? Are you really going to do best player available? Are we going to do Brock Bowers at 14? Because we still haven't addressed the tight end. And that was the other position I want to talk about too is safety. We haven't addressed the safety position yet in free agency. We lost two players. We lost May, who we released, and we lost Lonnie Johnson, who went off in free agency. We spent a lot of time talking about possible safeties last time. Some safeties have been signed since then, but like Justin Simmons, Vince Buck, that's the end of his career right there. That hit. That was the end of Vince Buck's career. It was a second neck injury. Last time we saw Vince Buck as a Saint, right in that background. Good player. It's a shame. Good player. Yeah. Justin Blackman's still available. I think the guy that you liked from Tampa is still available. The safety market is horrible. Uh, Simmons is available.
Yeah.
Um, do you think they make a move and sign a safety this week or maybe next week?
I tell you, I'd like to see them, bring in a safety, because just like at wide receiver, you don't have, forget quality depth. You have no depth. They just re-signed Hugo Amadi today, which
Yeah.
a special team signing. Gave you some nice defensive snaps last year, but that
Hmm.
means you only have on your team under contract at safety. You have Tyrann Mathieu, Jordan Howden, Hugo Amadi, and JT Gray. JT Gray ain't a defensive player.
Yeah.
So again, just like we said with wide receiver, you have to sign a safety because I don't think you have a choice. Um, and I don't see it being Justin Simmons. Yeah, I know the ties are there with Joe Woods, Marcus Robertson, and Simmons is a hell of a player. I can't see the Saints being able or willing to shell out the money it's going to take to bring in Simmons on a 3 or 4 year deal. And as long as it, as long as Simmons remains unsigned, the longer Simmons remains unsigned, that possibility of a 1 year fairly reasonable deal keeps cropping up, but you can't roll the dice and go
Hmm.
completely without a safety while you hope for that to happen. So who do you go for? Maybe a Quandre Diggs, who, if he could stay healthy, is still a quality deep safety.
Hmm.
I'd love to see Micah Hyde. I think you could get him relatively cheap on a 1 year deal. Maybe a guy like Tracy Walker, Jaron Curse. I think you have to go after one of these guys because, as I said to someone earlier, this draft, at least in my analysis and what I've seen, at the several positions that I've analyzed, this draft has nice depth at all the positions that the Saints need, except safety. I think safety in this draft is absolutely abysmal. It's possible that the team might see a guy that they like, but you don't want to be forced to overdraft a guy or count on a guy from a bad position class, because you have no depth. Again, I'd like to see them. Everybody would love to see Justin Simmons. I have a hard time seeing that happening. I think it's more likely they bring in a guy like Micah Hyde. Or Quandre Diggs or somebody like that on a 1 year deal, similar to what they did with Willie Gay and Chase Young.
All right. Matt's going to try and stump me with a trivia question here. Who was the first Saints player to have over 1,000 rushing yards, 1,000 receiving yards, and 1,000 return yards in their career with the Saints? As a Saint, or for their career? Because the trick is the return yards question. You almost, as a Saint,
So
you know what? Fast Freddy's not a bad guess, but I don't think Freddie has the receiving yards.
I mean, the easy guess would be Reggie Bush, but I got to believe there's someone that did all three before that. I can't think of who it might be, though.
I thought maybe Sproles in 2011, but he didn't have 1,000 yards. He had combined yards as a Saint. The the trick of it is the return. That's what's sticking with me because I could think first 1,000-yard rusher was Chuck Munsing. Okay, so
Right.
Chuck the rushers, the 1,000-yard rushers are Chuck Munsing in '79, um, uh, George Rogers in '81, and then you don't get one until Ruben Mays in '86, Dalton Hilliard in '89, '88. No, '89. Dalton Hilliard in '89.
Yeah. And then nobody until Ricky Williams.
Nobody into Ricky Williams. Ricky Williams was the first one that had 1,000 yards back to back in Saints history. He had it in 2000, 2001. Deuce McAllister. That's who it is. It's got to be Deuce McAllister because
Return yards?
Yeah, because Deuce was a kick returner in 2001 because Ricky Williams was the running back. So Deuce was running kicks back. So it's got to be Deuce. That's the only person I can think of.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Yeah, because to me, I got to go through all the 1,000-yard rushers because until Ricky Williams and Deuce come along, 1,000-yard rushers just weren't happening with the Saints.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, that's the reality. You didn't get that. Wayne Wilson. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And he just passed away, and we just wrote an article on him.
Yep. I didn't even think about Wayne. Yes. Wayne Wilson. Yeah. Okay. All right. Wow. Yeah. That one. I should have known that. Yeah, Wayne just passed away too, number 30. Yeah. Wayne Wells was an interesting player. We talked about him when we played the Bears because the Bears quarterback was from Shepherd. What was it called? Shepherd University. That by that point,
it's now Shepherd University. When Wayne came out, was drafted. It was Shepherd College.
Yes, Wayne Wilson was drafted in '79 by the Saints, and when Chuck Muncie was traded, he was moved to the number one running back in 1980, which was a disaster, but that's beside the point. Wayne is one of those guys that he was kind of like an early Pierre Thomas, but in a more primitive offense, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. He was a guy who would do anything for you. Made him fullback, block for George Rogers. He did kick returns. He scored like 9 touchdowns in 1983. And doing the leap, they get to the goal line. George Rogers gets you all the way down there. Then Wayne Wilson just vulture the touchdown, and he do the leap over the pile and get the touchdown. So, yeah, that's man. I should have thought about that. And Wayne did return kicks. He did return kicks. So, shoot, I feel dumb. I should have known that. Oh well. Right now, if he's still on, John Butler's probably going, he's just rattling this shit off the top of his head. You know this.
You and me both, I know.
Yeah. But because Wayne just passed away, there was a lot of things I did look up to remind me of the stuff that he did. Yeah, and he was there from 79 to 86. When Jim Mora came, and he was traded, I think, to Washington. But when Jim Mora came, it was nothing but all brand new backs. I mean, he just cleaned house. Earl Campbell retired. You got, Dalton Hilliard, Ruben Mays, Barry Word. They all came in that draft. It was an all new class. You brought in Buford Jordan, McNeese's own Buford Jordan, in for the fullback from the USFL. All those things. And he played. He actually played for the New Orleans Breakers. Buford Jordan. He was leading rusher for the New Orleans Breakers with Marcus Dupree. And the only reason why I remember this stuff is because I was in high school when that was going on, and Walton Johnson, they were called the Q Morning Crew because they were on WQUE 93.3. They were on WQUE. They were called them the Q Morning Crew, and they would do a New Orleans Breakers report. And Steve Johnson, the master of all the voices, would imitate Marcus Dupree, and it was hilarious. It really was. And Dupree was always hurt too. Fantastic player out of Oklahoma. It was a one-year wonder really out of Oklahoma, and he injured his knee in the USFL, was never the same. But yeah, Walton Johnson, they would imitate Kenny Stabler. They'd imitate Marcus Dupree. In fact, the Who Dat record, and I've got it. It's in storage. But I've got the Who Dat record from 1983. The flip side is Walton Johnson's Q Morning Crew doing their own version of the Who Dat, and you hear Steve Johnson imitate Kenny Stabler when the snake comes marching in. So yeah, it's a classic. One day I'll have to find that and put it on the
Yeah.
show or something. Because yeah, that was, I'm telling you, when Bum Phillips came, it's like the city became, that's really when the city really went all in on the Saints again. Yeah, I know I'm a relic. I know. Cajun Ken Cooper on B97. People who know old New Orleans history know this stuff. But Cajun Ken Cooper played Big Bad Bum when they hired Bum Phillips to the tune of Big John, Big Bad John at the bottom of the well. That's that stuff. So if you know that song I'm talking about, at the bottom of the well,
I know the Big Bad
there's a
John song. Yeah.
man. Big Bad John. Yeah, well, they did the whole thing of Bum Phillips, Big Bad Bum. They played that in 81. And then 83, the Who Dat chant came about. And then 86 was, I believe, and I'm sorry, 87, I believe, and all that stuff with the Saint songs and everything else. So that's when all that began. So you heard all that all day long on the radio, all the Saints music and stuff. That's what happens when you watch the Saints for a long, long time. Like I have.
Right.
Especially because the Saints weren't on television. I mean, we weren't selling out games, so you had to listen to it on AM radio. So that's how you saw the Saints. If you weren't at the game, you didn't see games in the Superdome. In fact, preseason games, you had to wait till Sunday to see it. They would re-show the preseason game on a replay on Channel 4 in New Orleans on Sundays after the Saints games had already been played. So that's only you saw the inside of the Superdome on television, unless they sold out. So, Bob, what do you have going on for the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night?
Going to talk about how much, if any, these free agent moves or non-moves has changed the Saints draft strategy. Going to delve into the article that I published at Saints News Network on Sunday, because in my opinion, we touched on it a little bit tonight too. A pretty clear off-season plan has sort of evolved, or at least revealed itself, by the way the Saints have handled free agency. Willie Gay probably crossed off the major need for a linebacker. Chase Young probably removed the need to draft an edge rusher in the first round, but not altogether. The quarterback strategy, things like that. So Brendan and I are going to delve into that a little bit more. Talk about potential free agent targets. You and I, mentioned safety, but there's some offensive linemen, both guards and tackles, still available out there. So just stuff like that. And continue to, we're only a little bit over a month away from the NFL draft. So we're going to start to talk about some specific prospects too.
Yeah. That I do want to get into that more, and I think free agency is going to kind of cool down a bit, because this is now teams, once the calendar starts to turn to April, they become more focused on the draft. They're more focused on pro days, things like that. Then, of course, after the draft, then you have the mini camps, and you may see a little bit more free agency activity. But for the most part, the big moves have all happened. There's still some significant holes on the roster. Offensive line is a legitimate one. Dallas Turner and Brock Bowers and Jared Verse, probably my top three players. Number 4 is going to be that guard / tackle for Penn State. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Fashanu.
That's it. So because obviously we're not going to get Joe Alt. He's not in our range, but right. Those are the guys I'm going to be looking at. But and I agree with you. O-line, you can probably get at 45 as well. There are some receivers I do like in the draft, but man, it's tough to take him at 45. But you're not going to see another pick based on where we are right now until the 5th round.
Right.
So, you're going from guys who probably fall out of the day one. Then now you're looking at guys that are 5th round picks. And yeah, you can get something out of your 5th round pick, but not your big physical receiver that you need. You're the guy who really needs to replace Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
I don't know, Bob. You gonna do that?
You know,
Polish your draft guide.
I don't know if I have enough time. I would have to make I'll have to ask Mike to see how much money he made doing it, because I would have to make an awful lot of money. But I watch film on, so I'm going to end up publishing, draft pieces, draft profiles on about 30 to 40 different prospects. But by the time the draft gets here, I would have had a notebook, a notebook page or two, a notebook page front and back, on probably about 100 prospects. So, I think I got some work to be in the Detillier range, but I'm up there. Maybe it's a long-term goal.
I told Mike a couple of years ago. I said, "Man, Mike, I really, really miss that draft guide." I said, because you sold me on that draft guide when we drafted Onyemata, and I am scrambling the internet. I am scrambling everything. No one has a profile on Onyemata. I opened his book up. There's a paragraph on Onyemata. He had done a report on the guy.
Yep.
So I'm like, why waste my time buying anybody else's draft guide other than Mike Detillier's draft guide? So it really educated me on a lot of prospects and helped me, because Sean Payton was so in love with some unknown guy from no college you ever heard of, that it turned out to be a guy he drafts and a guy who ends up playing well for you. Hakeem Hicks came out of Canada as well,
Yep.
And these guys are early in the draft. So, but yeah, it's Mike just didn't have the time for it anymore. His last one was a few years ago, and now that he's on WWL. Oh, look, JT O'Sullivan, the expert now on quarterbacks, former Saints draft pick. There he is, the 49 getting the crap beat out of him. But yeah, it's oh, I thought for a minute that was that's Case for Harn. This is 2008 Saints. Case for Harn. I thought for a minute that was Jason David making a play. I was like, enjoy it, fellas. That's Jason David making an interception in the end zone. But Case for Harn is even more rare of making an interception.
Yeah.
But anyway, Bob, y'all gonna be on a regular night Wednesday night? You're gonna be on Thursday night this week?
No, we're doing Wednesday night this week, 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 on the East Coast.
Okay, good deal. All right, guys. Thank you all for sticking with us tonight. There's a lot of free agents activity still to come, but like Bob and I were just talking about, it's going to be getting more and more into the draft. Next week is going to be more draft focus. We're going to talk about some of the needs now the Saints are going to have in the draft. A lot of the stuff that Bob is talking about on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. So be sure and check Bob out. Join us next week. Who knows what I'll have going on the big screen behind me, but this is a hell of a game. This is the Vikings game. This is the Reggie Bush 3-touchdown game. And some of the best kick returns ever. But anyway, this team, I have an autographed football of the 2008 Saints, unfortunately. I won it in a raffle. My neighbor won the autographed football of the 2009 team. So one day I'm doing the swap. But I've got to get where he doesn't see me so I can do the swap, because he ain't going to know. I'll know, but he ain't going to know. He's just got it sitting on a shelf. He didn't have it in a case or anything.
Wow.
I'm doing the swap. I know. I'm doing the swap. Well, his daughter won it. This is the best part. His daughter won it. And she goes, yeah, I got this football, and it was signed by the Saints. Oh, yes, the Reggie Bush face mask that no one ever saw. And the dad says, you what? He's like, yeah. This football, it's all signed by the football players. It's a 2009 Saints Super Bowl team that signed this. I'm like, oh, my God. That's what he said. He said, I'll take it. You know, she won it in an auction. So I won mine in an auction, too. So we'll leave it at that. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. Bob, take it easy. Stay warm. And we'll see you next time in Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Good night.